Imagine this. One of your investors tells you about a competitor who's just raised a massive round of funding at a valuation twice yours, and they've signed three major enterprise deals. And you're thinking, how is that possible? Their technology isn't half as good as ours. It's maddening. You start to question everything. Have I hired the right people? Did I choose the right strategy? Maybe we're not developing the right features. Maybe I need to find a better productivity system or read that book by Ben Horowitz. And then the question you've been afraid to say out loud to anyone: what if I'm not smart enough to figure this out? I'm Renita Calhorn, and I've worked with over 1,000 founders in building their startups. And I can tell you, because I've seen this pattern come up with pretty much every one of them. Sure, your team might need work, your strategy might need adjusting, but I've watched founders fix those things, and it's not what moves the needle. That's because it doesn't get to the root of the problem. It's not the most brilliant founder who wins. It's not the most charismatic or most disciplined. It's the one who can think clearly under pressure, make decisions from clarity instead of fear, and learn faster than the competition. And this is why so many founders hit a wall. They're working harder than anyone else. They're driven, genuinely brilliant at what they do. And yet at some point, the harder they push, the less things move. The team isn't gelling. Decisions aren't translating. They can't seem to stop making the same mistakes until they make one fundamental shift. And it almost always comes down to the same thing. They stop operating in survival mode. And that's when the company takes off. Today, I'm going to talk about why this is happening in the first place. Because if you don't understand the root cause, it's hard to fix it. Here's what's happening when you're in survival mode. Your amygdala, which is like the fire alarm of the brain, perceives threats in your social environment, to your status or autonomy, for example. And it reacts in the exact same way it does to physical threats. It triggers the fight or flight stress response. And that stress response affects your cognitive functioning in three key ways. One, it causes you to overfocus on perceived threats, making you easily distracted or reactive. You're afraid to be seen as weak, so you get aggressive or defensive or shut down. That's why you sent that impulsive email to the investor telling them they would regret passing on your company, or snapped at your best engineer when they questioned a decision. Two, it impairs analytical thinking, creative ability, and problem solving, the cognitive capabilities that founders need most. And three, it produces cortisol, which makes you risk averse and keeps you from spotting opportunity and taking decisive action. And the more stressed you are, the more your amygdala thinks it needs to run the show. And what makes this even more of a vicious cycle are the misperceptions founders have about stress itself. Here's what I see over and over. They know they have unhealthy levels of stress, but tell themselves it's just the price to pay for success, isn't it? And they don't know what to change. They actually rely on the adrenaline of external pressure, a tight deadline or potential failure, to stop procrastinating and finally take action. And they have such a high tolerance for stress that they overestimate their ability to cope and don't even recognize to what degree they're in survival mode because it's been their mode of operation for so long. One of my clients was grinding his teeth and had acid reflux, signs that chronic stress was taking a real toll on his health, and yet he rated his stress level as a 4 on a scale of 10. Another founder I worked with was the CEO of a high-growth tech startup, raised $100 million in VC funding. On the surface, he was winning. But when we started working together, he told me he always felt reactive, jumping into action without thinking things through. He never felt fully present, and his mind was always racing, especially at night. Despite all his accomplishments, he still questioned whether he was the right person to be leading the company. And work felt like a slog. He was starting to wonder how long he could keep going. This is what survival mode looks like, and it's the root cause of why brilliant, capable founders aren't operating at their full capacity. So here's what I want you to know. You are more than smart enough. That's not the problem. And the problem isn't that you have stress. By its nature, building a company is going to be stressful. The problem is that you're letting the impact of stressors accumulate without processing them in real time. And when that happens, your amygdala becomes hypervigilant, constantly overriding your rational thinking brain. And you're not able to access your full cognitive capacity. So how do you fix this? Most founders know about the usual stress management tools: sleep, exercise, meditation. These are all useful, but they don't get to the root cause, the three cognitive mistakes your survival-oriented brain routinely makes. 1, overestimating threats. 2, underestimating opportunities. And 3, underestimating your resources for handling those threats and taking advantage of those opportunities. And overestimating threats is what's keeping your amygdala hypervigilant. And the threats it's seeing aren't saber-toothed tigers, they're the stealth triggers in your everyday environment. So until you identify and address those triggers, your amygdala will be quick to sound the alarm, keeping you in survival mode. What do I mean by stealth triggers? Well, it's not the big dramatic events that create the most stress. What trips founders up is the small stuff: an unproductive meeting, pushback from a smart engineer, a snarky exchange on the leadership team. None of these feel company threatening in the moment, but over time, the impact accumulates, wearing down your ability to think clearly, make objective decisions, and lead effectively, and keeps you from accessing your full cognitive capacity. I developed a framework called FAST, F-A-S-T-T. It's based on David Rock's SCARF model that maps the 5 stealth triggers most likely to activate your amygdala as a founder. The first is future. Can I predict what's going to happen? The second is autonomy. Do I have control over my decisions? The third is status. How do I compare with others? What's my relative standing? Fourth is tribe. Am I part of the group? Can I trust others? And the fifth is time. Will I have enough or will I run out? I'll put a link in the description to an article that goes deeper, and I'll be talking about it more in future videos. But even just being able to name which trigger is affecting you in a given moment, that's the first step to getting out of survival mode. So what's one thing you can do today to start addressing your stress in real time? First, just notice when you feel triggered and pause. Don't push it away, don't react, just observe it and ask yourself, which fast trigger is at play? Was it future? Is there some particular uncertainty about what's coming? Autonomy. Someone made a unilateral decision or changed a deadline without consulting you. Status, tribe, time. Go through all of them. And as Daniel Goleman says, name it to tame it. That alone will give you a sense of control. That's the first step out of survival mode. And as you learn the tools to retrain yourself that I'll be teaching here on this channel, here's what becomes possible. One founder I worked with came to me feeling reactive and transactional, hesitant to dive into highly technical or messy conversations. And when he started understanding what triggered him and others and how to neutralize those triggers, something shifted. He developed a reputation for not being afraid to ask the hard questions. He turned around a dysfunctional team in 90 days and tripled their output. People were constantly telling him how he inspired them, and his investors said they wished they could clone him. And the best part, he didn't have to change who he fundamentally was. Getting out of survival mode actually gave him access to his full capabilities, so he could be more of his authentic self. You can do the same. You're smart enough, you have what it takes. You just need to get out of survival mode so you can access it. This is exactly what we'll be working on in the High EQ Founder membership. Sign up for the newsletter to be the first to know when it goes live. I'll put the link in the description. Until then, I'm rooting for you.